Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to be talking about 9/11. Yes, we are approaching the 25th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, September 2001, and it's really hard for me to believe that it's coming to that point because for those of you who followed my work for a long time, 9/11 was the issue that really woke me up way back in late 2009, going into 2010, back in my hometown of Houston. I got involved with a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth just as a volunteer. I'm obviously not an architect or an engineer, but I was really interested in the issue and wanting to learn more. I started going to events. I went to Washington, D.C. in 2010, and then I started going to New York City on the 10th anniversary of 9/11 in 2011 to be involved in the activism, the conferences, and the many things that happened around this issue. And so it really has been core to my awakening, you could say. And today, our guest we're going to speak with is actually somebody I've known since way back then. And I looked up in my videos in 2012, August 2012, I first got to speak with Richard Gage and talk about this whole issue of 9/11. And here we are approaching the 25th anniversary. And thankfully, there are some more events that you can get involved in New York City for those of you who are maybe veterans of this issue or those of you who have just started to question the events of 9/11. I think this is going to be a perfect opportunity for you to come out, meet like-minded people, maybe meet your favorite journalist or meet some of your favorite activists and get to learn more about this issue so you can continue to spread the word, because that's what matters more than anything as we approach the 25th anniversary. How do we actually get the public to continue to question the events of 9/11 and, more importantly, to hold those accountable who are actually behind the events? So to tell us all about this and much more, I'm going to bring on my buddy Richard Gage, San Francisco Bay Area architect, AIA member of the American Institute of Architects. You may also know he was the founder and former CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and he continues to do this important work along with his wife over at richardgage911.org. How are you doing, Richard?
Fantastic, Derrick. Awesome to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for joining me again. As I was saying there, I look back at my old videos and I have a video of a much younger, both of us, back in 2012 in Houston,
Yeah.
where you were doing some events back then in Houston, promoting the new documentary at that time and preparing for the anniversary events of 9/11. And here we are. We're both still at it. You're continuing to do this great work. And I'm so grateful to just talk to you today about not only the evidence for those who are new to it, but also this important event that you have planned in just a couple of weeks. So before we get into that, Richard, I actually would like to give you a chance. Since we mentioned you are former founder and CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, do you want to say anything to that effect of what you're doing now or something, about that transition, if there's any particular reason or if it was just time for you to move on? Anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah. Apparently, it was time for me to move on because COVID happened in 2020. And I needed to talk about what's current and relevant and this new emerging false flag operation that we have all suffered through for the last 5, 6 years. So it was not something though that the board at AE 911 thought we should be talking about. So we had quite a difference of opinion over that. So I ended up being parted ways from AE 911 Truth, the organization I founded. And Gail and I, my wife, started Richard Gage 911, and we've been busier than ever with almost 100 interviews and a dozen speaking engagements, you know, for the first few years. And so, yeah, we're real busy, and now we're helping a whole team of people put together the 25th anniversary 9/11 Truth Conference. This is the big, kahuna. We're pulling out all the stops to get all the 9/11 truthers together. We got 40 speakers. Derrick, this is quite incredible.
It's going to be a good one, I can tell. But just, well, thanks real quick before we get into that, Richard. Thanks for sharing about that. And I will say, just personally, thanks for speaking up about COVID when it mattered too. I totally get maybe why some might say, hey, that's not our focus or that's not our interest. But I'm glad to see that you are continuing to do the important work and also recognizing how 9/11 is, part of a bigger problem that we're facing. And I think many people who found their way to 9/11 Truth through architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, which was a big force. I think many of those people also understand that 9/11 is just one piece of a much larger agenda, and it's important for us to dissect that if we're going to be honest and able to really, tackle this topic. So thank you for your bravery and your honesty in that front. So let's talk all about this. It's called Turning the Tide. I know should we go ahead? You had a video you wanted to play. Should we just start with that and then we'll get into it?
Oh yeah, right on. This is pretty exciting stuff here, guys.
If you look at the film of the North Tower collapsing, you can see all the explosions in the controlled demolition of that building happening in front of your very eyes.
That was the BBC and in real time on television telling you that the Building 7 had already fallen when it hadn't fallen yet.
If it was true that two planes brought down 3 buildings in a completely unprecedented way, then that should have caused us to rethink the way we build these buildings. It didn't.
If 100,000 tons of structural steel is found that far outside of the perimeter, what's there to crush the building?
Not one, not 2, but 3 different peer-reviewed scientific studies have concluded there was informed trading before 9/11.
We have a clear right and an obligation to search for answers to the fundamental question about the planning of 9/11, its execution, the physical effects, the structural consequences when the planes hit the World Trade Center.
I felt this, I call it an incredible force of wind, of something coming at you. You're either gonna move or you will die.
And on the side of the U-Haul truck had a mural. Had the Twin Towers on the side and a plane going into the Twin Towers.
The further down into that pile I got, the more I could make out what looked like from a science fiction movie, molten lava.
Why was crucial evidence of melted structural steel suppressed and not even considered, or worse yet, allowed to be carted off and destroyed?
The 9/11 Commission did not look into at all how the towers came down.
In my work with the anthrax letters, they would cite experts or, administration official, and they would never give you the name. And when they don't give you the name, you know they're giving you the narrative.
How come 4 commercial airplanes could be hijacked in a period of 90-something minutes and nothing happened?
I'm excited for that. That's going to be, like you said, Richard, this one's going to be packed. This is going to be a good one, I can tell. So for those who are maybe just listening and not watching, you heard Roger Waters there of Pink Floyd. You heard Jimmy Dore, Jason Burmis, James Corbett. You also heard from first responders, firefighters. This is going to be, it feels like to me, Richard, sort of almost a reunion in a way of all the different folks who've been part of the 9/11 Truth movement in the last 25 years who have been playing a big role. And you also showed Dennis Kucinich, Mary Holland, Brett Weinstein. Are all these folks going to be in person, or is this mix of virtual and in person? Could you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, everybody's coming in person, and except from Japan, we have James Corbett. We're piping him in, but everybody else,
wow,
in person. In fact, we're going to have in person Derrick Broze.
I will be coming,
and we've just asked him to speak. He's got a lot to share.
I'm excited, Richard. Very excited.
He's got solutions to the problems. Right?
Yeah.
And he's delved into the Oklahoma City bombing, false flag event. So we're looking forward to hearing about these things.
Yeah, let's go ahead and make sure everybody, the website, turningthetide911.org, turningthetide911.org. It's happening September 10th through the 13th in New York City. As I mentioned a couple moments ago, I mean, this has always been an important part of my activism from the early days, and it feels good to me to be getting back to the city because, you know, life happens. Journalism has taken me in different directions. 9/11 is still, I think, a big piece of the puzzle, but I haven't been to New York City for the anniversary events. I would say maybe 7 years if it's been that long, coming up that quick. So I'm excited to come back and to see some old friends. And yes, I would love to speak and share some ideas and talk about the Oklahoma City event, as well as I plan to be there doing media to conduct interviews with any of the guests who would like to speak. And we can do another in-person interview, Richard, because it's been years. And I do want to invite everybody who is hearing this to come in person if you can, because I put out a video the other day, just Richard kind of outlining to the audience, and I think you know this firsthand, the importance of coming together in person. Of course, we can watch podcasts, we can watch documentaries, and those are valuable. And I make podcasts, I make documentaries for that reason. But there's something special and unique about coming together face to face with other like-minded people to discuss these controversial topics. And especially because often many people feel like they can't discuss these things in their day-to-day lives, at their workplaces, their families, and their regular relationships. But when you can get together with a group of hundreds, if not thousands of people coming together in New York City to talk about this important issue, it's something special. And so I know you guys have a schedule of events, 4 days starting on Thursday, going through Sunday. And then there's also going to be a brunch, if I'm correct. What else do you guys have planned there, Richard?
We've got boy, do we have a schedule, 4 days. We have a VIP brunch. We're encouraging you guys who can and want to support the effort of this conference to buy a VIP ticket or donate $911. You'll be having brunch with Jimmy Dore, Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, Dennis Kucinich, Brett Weinstein, myself, Derrick. we're going to be having brunch all together. These folks, 60 of us, speakers and the VIP. So yeah, that's going to be an important part of it too. Also, if you have a product or service, or particularly 9/11 materials you want to provide, we have vendor tables. So look and ask about that opportunity too. So there's 8-foot tables. There's only 10 of them and they're going fast. So email Derrick right away and he'll get the information to me, or contact us at the website. This one here, richardgage911.org, or as Derrick mentioned, turningthetide911.org. And you can contact us and let us know you're interested in a vendor table too.
I hope people do that. I hope you guys who are hearing that again will come out in person. I'm excited to be involved, and I think this is the issue. I mean, you touched on it a little bit earlier, Richard, how you felt the desire, the need. You felt compelled to talk about COVID when we witnessed everything. I like to call it COVID 1984, between everything we witnessed those years. That's obviously an important issue. It's still being dissected and will be dissected for years to come, as is 9/11, 25 years after the fact. We're still diving into the evidence. People are debating this theory versus that theory. They're still trying to find out who are the actual suspects that should be interrogated and brought in front of a criminal court. This issue, it predates COVID, and it really laid the foundation for everything we saw during COVID. And for me, I remember I was 17 years old when 9/11 happened. I was in high school watching it on the TV at school and remembering how that led right into the war with Iraq, and how we were being convinced that that was necessary. And of course, that led to Department of Homeland Security, TSA, and everything else we've seen, the rise of the security police state since that time. It all traces back to 9/11 and what they pulled off that day. So I really want to invite everybody, if you're new to this topic, or again, if you're a veteran, but you want to come out in person, do check out the website, turningthetide911.org. Go to Richard's website, richardgage911.org, so you can learn more about this. I think it's going to be a really important event. And if you can, come out and vend, be involved. I know from experience how expensive it can be to put on these very important events. So please do support those who are making that effort. And Richard, with all that said, I know you'd like to share some of the evidence for those who might be new to this, because you've been at this going, on decades plus now, investigating and exposing and giving many, many presentations around the world. And I'm also glad to see that your work has been growing. You've been on some big podcasts since we've last spoke, and that's great to see. We have more people like Tucker Carlson and others in the mainstream talking about 9/11 now. The landscape has changed over the last decade, to say the least. And I'd like to get you a chance to get into the evidence, but maybe you could speak to that for a moment. How does it feel now to see 9/11 almost, if not already, be mainstream compared to where it was 10 years ago?
Right. Look at 20 years ago, Tucker Carlson ridiculing Stephen Jones and David Ray Griffin. It's and now apologizing in the last year or two. He's come a long way. He's done, in fact, a 4-part series on 9/11, which is really rather well done for Tucker Carlson. He doesn't go all the way, but what did he have? He had on one of his documentary parts the 4-year study by the Leroy Hulsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, who did this study proving that Building 7 couldn't have been brought down by fires. So I'll show that to you. But we've come so far. We've been on Redacted and PBD podcast and Jimmy Dore. And we're trying to get on Tucker Carlson. And someday we'll even wake up Joe Rogan, who's just sitting on the fence for 20 years, talking and not talking and going back and forth about Building 7 of all things, which is so obviously a controlled demolition.
Do you think, just one personal question on that before we do get into the evidence, Richard, because I applaud that Tucker and his team did the documentary series they did. Like you said, I don't think they went as deep as other people like James Corbett, who's been making excellent documentaries for a decade, almost 2 decades now, and people who've been talking about this forever. I've produced a couple myself, but of course we applaud, like, great, more people, millions of people now maybe questioning 9/11 where they never did before. And I would be lying if I didn't say I have my skepticism about that sort of upper tier of podcasts that you just mentioned, the Rogans and the Tucker Carlsons, and we could name some other names. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to prove, is Joe Rogan this thing or that thing? Is he just skeptical? Who knows? And maybe it's a waste of time to even dissect that question. But do you have any feelings on that? Do you think that 9/11 truth has a ceiling, I guess is what I'm asking? Like, will we ever be able to break past that sort of ceiling of the Rogans and the Carlsons?
Yeah, it's sort of like, we're not in charge of that, although we'd love to be. We work hard for 20 years, yourself, at least that long. And there's thousands of us, that are putting this word out on in various ways, in formats and platforms. And, it's kind of, if you watch it, it's kind of like watching the swimming pool fill up, but it is filling. It's just not to our own satisfaction. God's in charge, not us. We do the work, and we try to wake up the public, and that's what this conference in New York City is really all about on the 25th anniversary, is to steal some of that limelight from the official narrative that's being put out in New York on September 11th also. So I think we're competing, and I think we are breaking through and will break through even more. And this is our big year. This is it, the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. And I agree. We're not in control, right? And we have to just do what we can do best. And I do think that these big anniversaries, the 10th anniversary, the 20th anniversary, the 25th, they present an opportunity where we know there's going to be a lot of media attention on the anniversary. There's going to be mainstream news in New York City. Trump might have something planned. The White House might be doing something, right? So there is going to be a lot of discussion on 9/11, whereas some years, it's kind of like an afterthought. Oh yeah, it's the anniversary of 9/11. But on these bigger dates, the 25th anniversary, there's going to be a lot more people paying attention. So I do think that there's a unique opportunity here to kind of catalyze some of that energy and that discussion that has been increasing. And yeah, again, I applaud you for making that effort.
And Tucker did agree to come and speak last year at our Washington, D.C. presentation, where we did have Senator Ron Johnson also there and did speak, a sitting senator, to a 9/11 Truth Conference, unheard of. So that happened last year, and it should happen again this year. But Tucker had to decline because his best friend got shot. So Charlie Kirk. So we're hoping Tucker will arrive also and speak now. So
Great.
that would turn things around.
Okay, well, I look forward to it. Let's go ahead and we'll spend maybe the rest of this interview, give people a little teaser of some of the presentations and some of the details. Let's just start right with it. I know World Trade Center 7 is really the smoking gun in a lot of ways, and I'll let you take it away here to share some of your evidence.
Oh, right on. And I want to encourage people while you're bringing that slide up, we have a need for courage to look at this information. Some of you are old hat, but you're sharing it with people who haven't been, haven't seen this evidence at all. So encourage them. So, yeah, this took me for a loop the first time I heard it. Just go back to your own experience. It's not easy. It turned my world upside down. This threw me for a loop. It was like being hit on the head with a 2x4. Most people don't know anything about the third tower that came down, for instance, 47-story skyscraper, easily the tallest building in most of our states, about a football field in length away from the North Tower. Had a little bit of damage, but from the North Tower when it came down, but that wasn't a significant factor. But let's look at this collapse of this building 7 hours after the Twin Towers came down. This 47-story skyscraper, the east penthouse comes down first, drops, and then 6 seconds later, that was an isolated event, but here is the global collapse then. So wait a minute, it's dropping as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. How does that happen? How does it happen that it drops symmetrically? How does it happen that it falls, that not one of the 82 columns in this building gave any resistance for it to fall at free fall acceleration? And that's how fast it falls. So where did those columns go?
Richard,
Well,
real quick, I'm just curious. Do we have any, can't recall this off the top of my head, and I know you'd be the man to ask. Do we have any data or even theories on why the penthouse collapsed first like that and the time passes between that and the rest of it?
Well, what the official narrative is that the whole collapse started in the east on the left and then traveled left to right, east to west across this football field length building, which you don't see any evidence for that. There's only a dozen windows breaking, but if this building would have collapsed the way NIST says it's collapsing, i.e. from the inside first, then you would have had massive breaking of granite panels and windows crumpling like a beer can, but you don't see any of that. So the question is, what happens to the east penthouse really? Well, we think they took it down in a controlled demolition because that cooling tower is full of water, and they wanted to lower it in the building and get it to fall first. So that's one theory, and so that's why NIST focused in the northeast corner in their initiation of collapse theory. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, you bet. And let's listen to what NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, says about what brought this building down in their view.
What we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fire.
Fires? Okay, well, we ought to look at those fires. Well, these are the worst fires that we have in this building. They're few, they're small and relatively small and scattered throughout the building. So the question is, are these fires, which burn out, by the way, over an hour before the building collapses, Are they responsible for this? No, we've never lost a steel frame fire protected structure ever due to fire. In the long history, 100-year history of these buildings, they are fire protected for a reason, and it works. And Building 7 was fire protected as well. Not even after 9/11 did we lose a steel frame fire protected structure, even in these fully engulfed buildings. So what do we have to ask? Well, what does it look like? Let me think. Building 7 on the right, series of known controlled demolitions on the left. Is there any similarity? Is there enough similarity to warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives, especially since it looks exactly like a controlled demolition, especially since fire, the official cause of this building, its collapse has never in history brought down a steel frame fire protected structure. So in our longer presentations, we walk through, and we'll be doing this in New York also. And this is what I did with Senator Johnson personally in a 90-minute presentation to him. We walked through step by step every matching of the typical features of a controlled demolition. We began with the sudden onset of the building. We showed that, yeah, it was indeed a sudden onset. We talked about the symmetry, that you have to take out all the core columns at once, followed about a second later by the perimeter columns. Any deviation in that pattern, the building would begin to tip over. And that makes sense because buildings that are damaged on one side or one corner, they fall in that direction. And you don't want that to happen either. But they wanted it to go straight down. And they gave us a free fall acceleration, as I mentioned. Physics teacher David Chandler proves this, embarrassed NIST publicly into admitting that it came down in free fall. But look, this building had 40,000 tons of structural steel. Where did all those columns go? They just all disappear at once because of these fires? Not going to happen. Simply not going to happen. So we look for witnesses that may have heard explosions like these.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. And then about a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that. And
about a second later, the bottom floor caved out, and the building followed after that. What does that sound like? And a sound of a clap of thunder, a shockwave ripping through the building, windows busting out, and then the building falling. How about Kevin McPadden, former Air Force medic?
You heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when in compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion.
This is important because NIST says there are no witnesses of explosions. And yet here we have a whole bunch of them. Like and Bill Rosati, what does he see?
I was standing like 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden I just seen a big flash, and then I seen the building coming down. And
a big flash and then the building coming down? How about fire department Captain Richard Patterson, first responder?
1-7 let go as well, and was a series of concussive explosions.
Okay, that's very helpful. How about Patrick Dillon, former, he was on site as a first responder as well.
I remember feeling that, like it was like freight trains underneath the earth, shaking the earth, even shaking me. That's when we all saw Building 7 crumple in the middle, like way up at the top. It buckled, and then dropped.
So NIST says, oh, well, what you're seeing here is people who heard sounds related to the building coming down, but again and again, you're hearing the order of events. Here's the deputy director of New York's Office of Emergency Management, Richard Rotans. What's his experience?
Then he had to go into that building to assess it.
You could hear the building creak above us. You could hear things fall. You could hear the fire burning. You could see columns just hanging from the upper floors, gaping holes in the floors up above us. There was an elevator car that was blown out of its shaft and it was down the hall.
What? Gaping floors and holes in floors up above us with columns dangling, an elevator blown out of its shaft down the hall 30 to 40 feet, as he clarified later. That's incredible. What can do that? Are fires going to do that? Remember, there's no explosions in this building, according to NIST. And yet here's a gentleman who was trapped in the building because he come late to the meeting because a plane had hit the building. He and Mayor Giuliani's attorney, Michael Hess, got up to the 23rd floor trying to get to that meeting, not realizing before they came into the building that the whole building had been evacuated. So they are trying to get out of the building, and this is their experience.
When we got to the 8th floor, I started walking to one side of the building. That side of the building was gone. The first explosion I heard when I was on the stairwell landing, when we made it down to the 6th floor. Then we made it back to the 8th floor. I heard some more explosions.
What sort of sound?
Like a boom. Like an explosion.
More than one?
Yes. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. When we get outside, a police officer comes to me and says, you have to run. We have more information of bombs, so you have to run.
Bombs? Bombs are heard by 24 other witnesses before Building 7 went down. And so what could be creating all of this? Well, we also have evidence of extreme heat. So we need to look at it. FEMA themselves produces in their Appendix C to the Building Performance Assessment Team report, May of 2002, this metallurgical examination. What did they find? Never before observed eutectic reactions, intergranular melting capable of turning a solid steel girder into Swiss cheese, or thinning the steel of these beams from the twin towers down to razor sharpness. Rapid oxidation, sulfidation, liquid iron, that's molten iron, invading the grain boundaries of the steel, hot sulfur corrosion attack on the steel. You can tell the temperature of this material by the color of molten iron or steel. We're exceeding 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. These temperatures don't come from jet fuel. They don't come from office fires. Those temperatures are typically 500 to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We're talking 3,000, 4,000 and more temperatures. And so this is evidence of ignited incendiaries throughout the World Trade Center, but we also have evidence of unignited incendiaries in the form of these red-gray chips studied by this team of international scientists led by Niels Harrod and Stephen Jones. And they examine the red chips. They find they're attracted to a magnet, so they have a high iron content. So they do X-ray energy dispersive spectroscopy and find the ingredients of thermite, aluminum, and iron. They zoom in 50,000 times with an electron microscope and they find nano-sized particles of iron oxide and aluminum powder, 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. This is not what you see in paint, okay? This is something else. So they document this in a 25-page peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal. Active, unreacted, thermitic material incorporating nanotechnology. It's highly energetic, pyrotechnic, or explosive material. So this gets the attention of this evidence becoming proof of controlled demolition. It's the attention of 3,000 architects and engineers signed on to the petition demanding a new investigation. It's actually over 4,000 now. And so they have come together in The previous documentary, Experts Speak Out, that we showed 10 years ago, but now again at 9/11 Crime Scene, the Courtroom, the film series taking the hard evidence of 9/11 crimes to court, filmed in front of a grand jury, our sit-in grand jury. And this film series is ongoing. We're on episode 6 now, so you can watch it. I'll show you how. And here is just a taste.
No matter how improbable the conclusion may appear, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
We're bringing alive in the film the 60 exhibits of the 9/11 WTC evidence contained in the Lawyers Committee grand jury petition that have already been submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan to present to a special criminal jury.
This historic investigation is ongoing, and there's a role for you in it. Yes, you can help us bring the real perpetrators to justice.
Through this film series, we're bringing together 24 experts in their field.
They ignored any scenario involving incendiaries.
Demolition work, you're going to set charges on each floor.
In other words, all of the interior columns over 8 stories came down. We're basically lost at once.
I could make out what looked like from a science fiction movie, molten lava, okay?
And he paused and said, that'll be coming down around 5 o'clock.
We'll be filming these evidence presentations not only for our filings with the grand jury, also as presentations to each of you.
We're inviting you to serve as virtual grand juror during each episode. And yes, you can see this series, all 6 of them that have been produced so far, at 911c2c.org. That's 911 letter C, number 2, letter C.org. And yes, many of these experts are appearing at Turning the Tide as well, the conference in New York that we've been talking about, 2013. And I just want to leave you with the teaser that we've got to look at the Twin Towers too, right? It's not just Building 7 that was a controlled demolition after all. Look as they're being destroyed simultaneously, side by side, identical buildings, identical destruction mechanisms, even though they've been hit differently at different levels. They had different levels of damage from the planes and the fires. We have upward, outward, arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons, laterally ejected at speeds of 80 miles an hour, clocked by physicists, landing up to 600 feet in every direction, trailed by thick white smoke clouds. Wait a minute. Steel is not flammable in office fire conditions. Why are these steel sections trailing thick white smoke clouds? Well, look at what thermite does. It produces lots of molten iron, but in addition, it produces thick white smoke clouds of what? Aluminum oxide ash, the other byproduct of thermite. So you're going to see in our other presentations, as we go into detail also on the Twin Towers, step by step through the features of controlled demolition. And so if you haven't seen this yet, be sure to visit Richard Gage, 911.org.
All right, Richard, I really appreciate you sharing all that evidence, and I definitely encourage everybody to go back and see the past presentations. Of course, the best thing to do is, if this is new to you, come to Turning the Tide in New York City and hear about it from Richard and the many other experts and journalists and activists themselves. I want to ask you one question as we start to wrap up here, Richard. I think I probably already know the answer based on what you just shared here, but since you are sort of in some ways maybe freed from representing a 9/11 truth and just speaking for yourself now these days, what do you think of, or do you give any more weight than you used to, or have your views changed on any of the other theories related to 9/11? As you know, besides controlled demolition, there's everything from there were no planes to some sort of nuclear weapon to Dr. Judy Wood and directed energy weapons to, you could name. I mean, I'm sure there's even more than that. I don't necessarily give all of them even the time of day per se, but I do think that there are some interesting bits of information. And we've had private conversations on this in the past, like how not only the buildings, the towers, but there were some cars that seemed to be melted by, something. Maybe it's the molten, from the buildings. Yeah, or in general, though, do you give any more or less weight than you used to these other theories? Do you remain open-minded to them, or do you think anything other than controlled demolition is just a distraction?
Well, certainly a distraction. And the evidence, as you point out, papers that are unburned, cars that are melting. We know there were explosives in cars, and cars were on fire. Direct energy weapons don't do that, and they don't turn steel to dust, which their proponents suggest that they do turn. That the steel turned to dust. Well, the steel, there's no dust. There's no steel dust in the dust. It's powdered concrete, 90,000 tons of concrete in each of these two towers were pulverized in midair. And that concrete powder was distributed laterally from river to river across lower Manhattan in a blanket 3 inches thick. So that weight wasn't available to bring down the towers. Neither was the weight of the steel, which is also a third of the weight of the towers. So there's 2/3 of the weight of the towers that weren't available to crush it, according to the official narrative. But regarding DEW, the proponent of DEW denies that there was evidence of extreme heat, which I just showed you irrefutable evidence of. She denies the evidence of explosions, which I've showed you many witnesses of explosions, and there's 200 altogether, including witnesses at the Twin Towers, of evidence of explosions, many of which before the towers even come down also. And the evidence of thermite and nanothermite is denied, of which, and that's irrefutable. So when somebody comes along and denies the irrefutable evidence that we do have, that we know brought down the towers, and provides scant and conflicting evidence for directed energy weapons, for instance, I have reason to be quite suspect about that, as well as the nuclear weapons theory, because we show in our videos, floor by floor, these explosions traveling down the face, all four faces of these buildings, corroborating the first responders of these explosions, and like a belt all the way around the building, they say. So that is evidence of pre-placed explosions in the exterior perimeter structural steel system, not a nuclear weapon going off, for goodness sake.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure we'll have some people who agree and disagree in the comments, as usual, in this wonderfully diverse 9/11 truth movement. My thoughts on that as we wrap up, and again, invite everybody to come to Turning the Tide. I remember I had the opportunity to speak at a 9/11 truth event back in maybe 2012, 2013. And I was still very new to not only my activism, but to the broader movement outside of Houston at large. And so I didn't really feel like I had room to speak on much of anything. But my thoughts then are the same as they are now, that even if people disagree on what they think actually happened, we can all unite around the fact that we know we were lied to, and unite behind that questioning of the 9/11 events and getting more of the American public to do that themselves. And I think that for me is still the key. We're 25 years after the fact, and you have accumulated a great body of evidence that I think everybody should absolutely consider and should look into, and should come to the event to learn more. And even if you're not on that page yet, or you have a different theory or some other thing like that, I think we can unite behind that common understanding that we were lied to, we continue to be lied to, and the events of 9/11 continue to ripple out into the world, the war of terror, COVID-19 84, and so much more. And that it's important that we all come together and we can question this where and when we can. And so one more time, I want to mention the website, Turning the Tide 911 911.org, turningthetide911.org. You can go here and check out the videos, the venue. You can see the ticket prices here, the full schedule of events, and all the speakers that we mentioned earlier are all listed here. And I'm really excited that you guys have so many in-person speakers. Of course, I wasn't expecting James Corbett to be coming all the way from Japan, although that would have been great if he could. But I think you've got a great lineup here of lots of in-person speakers, and that's so important. So if you guys can make it, I highly encourage you to come out. I will be there. I'll be doing some interviews. I will be doing a presentation, it sounds like, and I'm excited to connect with other 9/11 Truth family out there. So, Richard, would you like to leave us with any closing thoughts?
Yeah, if you scroll back up, I just wanted to give it one more teaser to people. There's a great video here by Larry Silverstein being confronted with the conference. It's done by Timeline Junkie, and it's going viral on the web. And he's AI, and it's funnier than hell. So I encourage everybody to watch this. It's only a couple of minutes long.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you for taking the time to join me to catch up a little bit. And I'm excited to see you in a few weeks. Everybody, please go to the website, turningthetide911.org, richardgage911.org. Continue to question 9/11, continue to spread 9/11 truth. And until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.